Today, we're looking at one of the most important scenes in all of biblical prophecy, Daniel chapter 7. And personally, I think it's one of the most fun chapters for a few reasons we'll get into as we study it. This is the chapter where Daniel sees four beasts rising out of the sea, and most people who study the prophecy immediately jump to the final beast, the 10 horns, the little horn, and the Antichrist. But if we move too quickly, you miss something very important. Daniel doesn't begin with the Antichrist. He starts with the sea. He tells us that he sees the four winds of heaven stirring up a great sea, and the four beasts rise from that chaos. So in this video, we're going to ask several important questions, and I'm going to provide answers to each. Why do the beasts rise from the sea, and what does that mean? What does the Bible mean when it connects the sea with chaos, nations, judgment, and monster-like power? Does the final beast kingdom appear suddenly, out of nowhere? Or does Daniel show us a staged development? And if he does, can we see the pattern in today's world preparing the world for the final beast? And one more important major question that I'm going to give an answer to. When Revelation 13 describes the final beast as leopard-like, barefooted, and lion-mouthed, what does that tell us? What is John trying to say? And I'm going to tell you exactly what it means in quite a bit of detail, so stick with me. That is what we're going to explore. So if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so. You won't want to miss this because I'm going to tell you exactly what the final beast will look like. Daniel 7 doesn't start with the Antichrist. Daniel 7 should not be read as though the Antichrist appears first and then creates the final beast kingdom from nothing. That's not the sequence Daniel gives us. Daniel first sees the four winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. Then the four beasts rise from that sea. The fourth beast is terrifying, dreadful, exceedingly strong, and different from the first three, and it has 10 horns. Only after Daniel is considering those horns does he see another horn, the little horn, rising among them. And later, the interpretation explains that the 10 horns are 10 kings who arise out of the fourth kingdom. Then another king rises after them, the Antichrist. That sequence matters. The little horn does not come before the 10 kings. He arises after them. So the Antichrist doesn't seem to create the 10-king structure. Rather, Daniel presents a structure already forming before the little horn rises within it or after it. That tells us that the final beast kingdom should be studied as a staged development. Chaos comes first, then kingdom, then the 10 kings, then the little horn, then consolidation, then persecution, then divine judgment, and finally the transfer of dominion to the saints of the Most High. So why does the sea matter? Daniel 7 begins with the sea because the sea is not just scenery. Throughout Scripture, the waters, the deep, the sea often symbolize the threatening realm of disorder, danger, judgment, death, and monster-like power among nations. That doesn't mean the sea is evil in itself. Genesis presents the sea as part of God's created world. But in biblical poetry, prophecy, and apocalyptic vision, the sea often becomes a symbol for chaos under divine restraint. In Genesis 1, the earth is formless and void, darkness is over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovers over the water. God does not battle other gods in Genesis. He simply speaks, orders, separates, gathers names and rules. Creation begins with God bringing order over the waters, and that's important for Daniel chapter 7. God creates true order. The beast kingdoms rise from chaos and create counterfeit order. They may offer administration, law, security, economy, military structure, but their order is beastly because it organizes human power apart from God and eventually against God and his people. The flood, Exodus, and the waters of judgment. The flood shows the same theme in another way. In Genesis 7, the fountains of the great deep burst open, and the windows of heaven are opened. Creation boundaries are breached. The ordered world is overwhelmed by waters. The flood is a kind of decreation judgment. Then God brings Noah through the waters into a renewed creation order. So the waters can symbolize instability, judgment, and the undoing of an ordered life when God removes the restraint. The Exodus story develops this even more. At the Red Sea, God divides the waters, delivers Israel, and judges Egypt. The sea becomes the arena where God defeats imperial power and rescues his covenant people. God destroys the armies of Egypt, but he also guides Israel through the waters. and that's incredibly symbolic. That idea is crucial for Daniel 7 because Daniel's beasts are empire powers. The Bible already gives us a pattern. God judges beastly empire through the waters and brings his people safely through chaos. Job and the Psalms repeatedly present God as the one who restrains and rules the sea. In Job, the sea must be bounded. God says to the proud waves, "Thus far shall you come and no further." The sea is powerful, but it is not ultimate. The Psalms say God stills the roaring of the sea and the roaring of the people, and that connection is important. Roaring water and roaring nations are linked together already in the Old Testament. The prophets make the same connection. Isaiah compares the roar of many nations to the roaring of mighty waters. Jeremiah describes Babylon's judgment as the sea coming up over her. Ezekiel portrays Pharaoh as a dragon in the waters. So by the time we get to Daniel 7, the sea is already carrying a massive biblical background. The sea represents the turbulent world of nations, empire, chaos, judgment, and monster power and rebellion. But it's not outside God's sovereignty. The winds that come on the sea are of heaven. The beasts rise only under divine permission. So now we need to talk about the wind. Jesus is Lord over wind and sea. This theme reaches a powerful moment in the Gospels when Jesus rebukes the wind and tells the sea, "Peace, be still." And the disciples ask, "Who is this then, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" That is a loaded question. In the Old Testament, the Lord is the one who rules the raging sea. When Jesus does this, he's doing something that, up to this point, only God had done. He commands the wind, he silences the sea, he walks on the water. So when Revelation later shows the beast rising from the sea, Christians should not panic as though chaos has escaped God's control. The beast rises from the sea, but Christ rules over the sea. Revelation brings the whole theme throughout the Old Testament and the New to its climax. In Revelation 13, John sees a beast rising out of the sea. That is Daniel 7 language. The final beast emerges from the chaos world of nations, rebellion, and beastly power. Revelation 17 even tells us the waters can symbolize people, multitudes, nations, and languages. It doesn't hide what it's trying to tell us. Then in Revelation 21, when John sees the new heaven and the new earth, he says, "The sea was no more." That doesn't mean the new creation has no water. That's not what John's trying to tell you. What John is saying is that the chaos has gone. Revelation 22 shows the river of the water of life, so there is water in the new creation. The point is symbolic. The sea as the realm of chaos, beastly emergence, separation, threat, and rebellion, it's gone. The world from which beasts rise has been removed. God's new creation is no longer threatened by chaos. So jumping back to Daniel 7, we see the pattern that he gives us. The four winds stir up the sea. That's divine ordination. The beasts rise, and the kingdoms emerge from chaos. Daniel later explains that the beasts are kings and kingdoms, so a beast can represent both a ruler and the dominion system embodied in him. The beasts do not descend from heaven. They rise from the sea. That contrasts sharply with the Son of Man in Daniel 7, who comes with the clouds of heaven. Beast kingdoms are seaborne. The Son of Man's kingdom is heaven authorized. That contrast is central to the idea. Beast kingdoms rise from chaos and become predatory, animalistic, and subhuman. But the kingdom given to the Son of Man and the saints comes from the Ancient of Days and lasts forever. We need to talk about the first three beast kingdoms before we can talk about the fourth. The first three beast kingdoms establish the pattern. The first kingdom is like a lion with eagle's wings. This corresponds naturally to Babylon. Babylon did not rise in a vacuum. It rose from the collapse of the Assyrian order, regional upheaval, Egyptian intervention, military transition, and imperial instability. The second beast is like a bear, raised up on one side with three ribs in its mouth. This corresponds naturally to Medo-Persia. Daniel 8 later identifies the ram with two horns as the kings of Media and Persia. The bear raised up on one side fits the unequal partnership of Media and Persia, with Persia becoming dominant. Medo-Persia rose as Babylon's weakened and eastern power consolidated. The third beast is like a leopard with four wings and four heads. This corresponds naturally to Greece. Daniel 8 identifies the goat as Greece, with the great horn as the first king. That first king is best understood as Alexander the Great. After Alexander's death, his empire fractured into major successor kingdoms. But the pattern is still there. Did you catch it? Babylon rises from Assyrian collapse. Medo-Persia rises from Babylon's decline. Greece rises from Persia's weakening and Macedonian Greek expansion. Beast kingdoms rise when the older orders collapse and new powers reorganize the ensuing chaos into dominion. One of the most important ideas of Daniel 7 is that there is counterfeit order. The beast kingdoms rise by offering order. It is counterfeit. They respond to real instability. They bring administration, borders, laws, courts, military security, economic systems, and political structure. From a human perspective, it looks like salvation. But Daniel sees beneath the surface. The kingdoms are beasts. They do not bring creation under God. They bring counterfeit order apart from God. And eventually, the counterfeit order turns against God's people. That is why the answer to beastly empire is not a better beast. Daniel 7 does not end with the reform of the fourth beast. It ends with the heavenly court sitting, dominion being taken away from the beast, and the kingdom being given to the saints of the Most High. The answer to beastly order is the kingdom of God. Moving to the final beast, Revelation 13 confirms that the final beast is a composite. John sees a beast from the sea. It's like a leopard. Its feet are like a bear's, and its mouth is like a lion's mouth. It's not random animal imagery. John, when he writes this, is reaching back into Daniel 7, but he does something striking. He doesn't simply repeat Daniel's sequence. He gathers Daniel's first three beasts into a final beast. The final beast carries the accumulated inheritance of Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. From Babylon, the final beast inherits image worship, imperial spectacle, royal boasting, and worship fused with political loyalty. Daniel 3 is the key example. Nebuchadnezzar sets up an image and commands peoples, nations, and languages to fall down and worship. Refusal is not treated as private religious disagreement. It's treated as rebellion against imperial order. That becomes a prototype for Revelation 13, where the beast's image is made and those who refuse to worship the image are killed. From Medo-Persia, the final beast inherits legal and administrative coercion. Daniel 6 is our key example. The decree against prayer makes faithfulness to God illegal. Daniel is not condemned for an ordinary crime. Law is weaponized against covenant loyalty. And that pattern matters for Revelation because the beast system is not just violent, it's administrative. It controls buying and selling. It enforces worship. It uses law, decree, penalties, permissions, and restrictions. From Greece, the final beast inherits speed, cultural assimilation, intellectual seduction, religious cultural synthesis, and sanctuary hostility. Greek power did not operate only through armies. Hellenism spread through language, education, cities, philosophy, athletics, commerce, elite culture, and religious blending. Under Antiochus IV Epiphanes, this pressure became a direct assault on covenant faithfulness, temple practice, and holy worship. So, when we look at Revelation's final beast, it's not just one ancient empire revived in a simplistic way. Pay attention to how John describes it. It is leopard-like in its core body, barefooted in its enforcement mechanisms, and lion-mouthed in its blasphemous imperial speech. It is Greek in morphology, Persian in administrative enforcement, Babylonian in image worship and blasphemy. That is the accumulated beastly inheritance concentrated into a final form, and Daniel tells us it rises from chaos. That chaos is sent from heaven directly. Daniel 8 gives us a near-historical example of the pattern. The ram is Medo-Persia, the goat is Greece, the great horn is the first king, Alexander. After that horn is broken, 4 kings arise from his empire. From that Greek successor world comes Antiochus Epiphanes. Antiochus is a real historical figure. He desecrated the temple, interfered with the regular offering, persecuted the holy people, exalted himself, corrupted the covenant loyalty, and cast truth to the ground. But Antiochus does not exhaust the pattern. Daniel 8 uses language that pushes toward the time of the end. Revelation, written long after Antiochus, still uses Daniel's beast imagery for the final beast. So Antiochus is the historical micro-example. He shows us the pattern of desecrating tyranny, but the final Antichrist is the eschatological escalation of that pattern. Many critical scholars identify the fourth beast of Daniel with Greece or the Seleucid Syria, and the little horn with Antiochus Epiphanes. That view should not be dismissed casually. It sees real historical correspondences. Antiochus did arise from the Greek successor world. He did persecute the holy people. He did attack the sanctuary. He did interfere with regular offering, and he did profane worship. But from a canonical futurist perspective, the view is incomplete. Why? Because Revelation reuses Daniel 7 after Antiochus. Daniel 7 describes the little horn making war against the saints. Revelation 13 says the beast is allowed to make war on the saints and conquer them. John writes after Antiochus, but he still uses Daniel's beast and little horn pattern to describe the final beast. Therefore, Antiochus cannot be the endpoint. He is part of the pattern, not the termination of the pattern. We need to talk about the fourth kingdom then, with the 10 kings. Daniel 7 says the fourth beast represents a fourth kingdom. It also says the 10 horns are 10 kings who rise out of that kingdom, and another king rises after them. The point here is the sequence. The 10 kings rise out of the kingdom, which tells us that the kingdom has to exist before the 10 kings rise. Then another rises after them. That's the Antichrist. But Daniel 7 doesn't necessarily require a long gap between the fourth kingdom rising and the 10 kings. That time frame isn't provided. Daniel first sees the fourth beast already having 10 horns. He does not first see a hornless beast and then later watch 10 horns appear. So two models remain possible. In the first model, a broader fourth kingdom order forms and then later produces 10 kings. In the second model, the fourth kingdom's first visible political form is the 10 king coalition itself. But either way, the non-negotiable point is this. The 10 kings are present before the Antichrist rises. The Antichrist does not create the 10 king structure. He rises after the 10 horn configuration already exists. Now, we cannot collapse Daniel 7 and Daniel 9, and this matters when we bring Daniel 9 into the discussion. Daniel 9 speaks about the covenant with many. Daniel 7 speaks about the fourth kingdom, 10 horns, 10 kings, little horn, and the saints being given into his hand. The passages are correlated, but you can't collapse them. Daniel 7 gives kingdom structure. Daniel 9 gives covenant action. The covenant might be related to the fourth kingdom. It might be supported by the 10 kings. It might be guaranteed by the emerging political order. And it may become the framework that the little horn later breaks. But Daniel 9 does not explicitly say the 10 kings are the many of the covenant. It does not explicitly say the covenant is the 10 king coalition, and it does not explicitly say the fourth kingdom and the covenant are identical. So the disciplined approach here is to keep these categories distinct until the text gives us stronger evidence. The fourth kingdom, the 10 kings, and the covenant with the many may converge, but they are not automatically the same thing. Now let's talk about the Antichrist and internal consolidation of power. Daniel says the little horn rises after the 10 kings and puts down 3. Earlier, Daniel sees 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots before the little horn. That language suggests internal conflict. It does not sound like a smooth succession. Several possibilities remain open. 3 kings might be personally removed. 3 kings may be subdued. 3 rulers may be replaced by compliant successors. 3 powers may remain in the structure but lose their independent authority. The point is that the little horn consolidates power by overcoming resistance within the 10 king configuration. Revelation 17 is important here and can control the way that we look at this. Revelation 17 portrays 10 kings acting with the beast. They receive authority for a short time. They become one-minded and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. That means Daniel's 3 subdued kings don't necessarily reduce the final coalition from 10 to 7. Rather, Daniel might be showing the conflict by which the little horn, or the Antichrist, gains power and dominance, while Revelation shows the result after consolidation. So the possible sequence is this. There's a divided coalition, a 3-king resistance, and the little horn subdues them. The 10, including the 3 that were subdued, become one-minded, and the 10 hand their authority to the beast. That reading preserves both Daniel and Revelation. Next, when we look at Revelation, we see a mature beast system. Revelation 13 does not necessarily show the earliest formation of the fourth kingdom. It shows the mature beast system after dragon empowerment and beast consolidation. The beast rises from the sea. We should read that as the beast rising from chaos. It has 10 horns and 7 heads. It has blasphemous names. The dragon gives it power, throne, and great authority. Then the beast is allowed to exercise authority for 42 months, and it is allowed to make war on the saints and conquer them. That directly echoes Daniel 7. Revelation 13 also shows the mature machinery of the beast system: worship enforcement, the image of the beast, economic exclusion, the mark of the beast, the threat of death for refusing to worship the image. A system like that requires infrastructure. It requires legal capacity, administrative reach, religious deception, and political enforcement, which are all the things from the other three beasts. So the final 3.5 years should be understood as the activation phase of an open beast authority, not necessarily the entire formation period of the fourth kingdom. The beast system may be forming before it's fully revealed. Before we wrap up, we need to talk about regional origin and global reach. The first three beast kingdoms are regionally related. Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece all operate in the biblical imperial corridor around Israel: Mesopotamia, Persia, Anatolia, Syria, the Levant, Egypt, and the eastern Mediterranean. That does not prove the fourth kingdom must live exactly in the same geography. But Daniel repeatedly returns to covenant, sanctuary, sacrifice, holy city, abomination, saints, and the holy people, and most centrally Israel. So the final crisis remains tethered to Israel's biblical world, and at the same time the final beast eventually becomes global. Daniel 7 says the fourth beast devours the whole earth, tramples it down, and breaks it in pieces. Revelation 13 says authority is given to the beast over every tribe and people and language and nation. Global reach does not require global origin. The kingdom may begin regionally and then expand into worldwide authority. This is most likely. For this video, I'm not trying to identify modern coalitions. That's a separate discussion. The point here is textual. Daniel and Revelation give us the formation pattern. So let's put the pieces together. First, transgression ripens. Daniel 8 says the ruler arises when transgressors have reached their limit. That should be understood as a pre-rise maturation of rebellion, apostasy, lawlessness, covenant compromise, and the refusal of truth. All of the things noted in Matthew. Second, the sea is stirred. Regional or global chaos destabilize existing order. It's going to get bad. National collapse, international collapse even. Daniel's beasts have a pattern. They rise from the great sea, stirred by the four winds of heaven. This means a divinely created chaos that eventually causes a global empire. That suggests global chaos. A situation so chaotic, the only apparent answer following the pattern of the first three kingdoms, the only apparent answer is to create and follow the beast kingdom. Third, the fourth kingdom, or the 10-king order, arises. Either a broader fourth kingdom order forms and produces 10 kings, or the fourth kingdom's first visible form is the 10-king coalition itself. Either way, the 10 kings are present before the Antichrist rises, the little horn. Fourth, the covenant with the many may be strengthened. This covenant may be related to the fourth kingdom, but the text does not prove they are identical. Fifth, peace or security may follow. The covenant may create real stability on the surface while remaining distinct from the kingdom structure itself. Sixth, the little horn rises up after the 10. The Antichrist rises from within, or from after the 10-king configuration is established. Seventh, the midpoint rupture occurs. He breaks the covenantal order, stops sacrifice and offering, and initiates the abomination of desolation crisis. At some point during all of this, 3 of the kings resist what's happening and are subdued. Some within the coalition resist the rupture or consolidation of power, and the little horn overpowers them, and the 10 kings become one-minded. The 10 kings hand their power and authority to the beast. Finally, the 3.5 years of beast authority begin in full, the tribulation period. The beast blasphemes God, wages war on the saints, and enforces the image, mark, and worship system. And finally, the divine judgment arrives. The beast is broken by divine action, the court sits, dominion is removed, and the kingdom is given to the saints of the Most High. All of this matters. The pattern matters, and it should change how we think about the final beast kingdom. The Antichrist does not simply appear in a vacuum. He does not create the final kingdom from nothing. Daniel shows a world of stirred waters, rising kingdoms, 10 kings, internal conflict, consolidation, persecution, and then divine judgment. Revelation shows that the final beast is not disconnected from the beasts that came before it. It gathers Babylon's worship of image. It gathers Medo-Persia's legal coercion. It gathers the cultural assimilation, speed, sophistication, and sanctuary hostility of Greece. And the final beast is the accumulated beastly inheritance of prior empires, concentrated into one final form. And yet, none of this is outside God's control. The winds are of heaven. The sea is stirred only under divine sovereignty. The beast is allowed to act only for a limited time. The saints may be conquered visibly, but the beast does not win ultimately. The court sits, dominion is taken away, and the kingdom is given to the saints.